Okay, great. So looks like it's started to slow a little bit now in terms of people coming in, but the session is being recorded and will be shared after. So please do feel free to share far and wide. First of all, welcome. It's great to have so many people on with us this morning. We have registrations today from Germany, Italy, Morocco, Kenya and beyond. So a real global audience, which of course is great. We're super excited to chat with you all for the next hour on social listening for the automotive industry. I'll take the driver's seat from here, and I promise that will be the first and only automotive pun that I make today. Just a little note for everybody, we do have time allocated at the end for a Q&A, but please do ask questions throughout the session as they're top of mind, and we may even answer some as we go along. Great. So by way of introductions, I'm Alex. I'm a strategic account executive here at Saltwalker, specializing in the automotive industry. I'm also joined by my colleague, Sam Koopney. He's the EMEA solutions lead and the kind of go-to person for everything that is Saltwalker platform.
Morning, everyone.
For those of you not familiar with Talkwalker, we will do a little bit of an intro right at the start. And then in terms of the rest of the session, we'll speak a little bit to channels of engagement and what that looks like for modern day social listening. We'll speak specifically to some of the key use cases across the industry as well and give you a little bit of insight into what we're hearing from our customers. And then we'll bring this to life within Talkwalker, and I'm super excited today that Sam is going to take you into the platform and show you, bring this to life. And then finally, we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for a Q&A, but as I say, do drop the questions into the chat. We'll be monitoring it throughout. Great. So for those of you that are not familiar with Talkwalker, we are a listening and analytics company. We empower brands to mobilize their digital strategies. So the idea is from insight to action, you're able to make those real informed decisions with the data that matters and understanding conversations at scale. We are a global team, so 6 offices worldwide across Europe, the US and APAC, and a team of over 350 experts that work totally in-house. So these are the super smart people that power our AI, that crawl our sources and ensure that we can bring you the best in class experience. The industry moves super fast, so we have to ensure that we are along for the ride. So I think some of these stats won't be a surprise to you. They certainly wasn't to us, but I think what they do is a really great job of demonstrating just how important it is that you're not just accessing the analytics that you need to understand your consumer, but that you're also using this to inform decision-making and strategy. So why does this matter? 86% of car shoppers currently conduct online research. Actually, this one was a little bit surprising to me. That number to make up the idea that most people are going online to do that research, instead of maybe going into car dealerships and kind of going on word of mouth. And then 22% of that research specifically actually involves social media. Again, so almost a quarter of the research done via social media. Again, surprising given the kind of the generations and how we typically think about who is doing that online research. And then 49% of consumers have shared online automotive content. So I think this goes to show just how important it is and how engaged these consumers are to share and to engage and interact with that content. Now, the space moves super fast, as we've said, and so finding new ways to appeal to those audiences globally and create that brand loyalty really gives you the potential to capture a large amount of that new market share. So what we want to do today specifically is speak about how social listening can work for the automotive industry and how you can tap into that new market share. So the space is very saturated. Oftentimes, what I hear from clients is, where do I start? How do I start? And how do I start to make sense of the data that I need? So the idea, this is actually our Talkwalker pinwheel. So this is an idea of the sources that we cover and continue to develop and cover. And the idea is to use this holistic 360 to not just view the data, but actually to join the dots. So how does social data tie into your analytics? Can you get a better idea as to how your campaigns are resonating with different audiences? Maybe even attract new audiences? And how do you use feedback and review data as a kind of secondary layer to build and retain those loyal customers? It's a lot of questions, and we don't always have the answers, but I think the most mature companies that we work with have taken away that guesswork element. And so really are using all of these different sources, all of these layers to join the dots and really future-proof their company and their strategy. And I am excited that Sam will bring this to life in the platform. I think this is when this will really start to resonate as well. But before we get there, I just wanted to touch on some of the key use cases that we're seeing across the space. Again, I think a lot of these will not be a surprise to you, but others I think really show the direction that the industry is going in and how, like I say, some of the more mature advanced companies are really taking their social listening strategies to the next level. So the first one is handling customer complaints. So I think it's absolutely true that customers often resort to social media to express their frustrations. Sometimes positive experiences as well, but the age-old saying that you're always going to hear about a bad experience is definitely true. And oftentimes these can be overlooked. So particularly if a mention doesn't contain handles directly, like this one on the right here, pretty scathing review, and somebody that was potentially a brand advocate before, so someone that was a loyal customer actually being pretty dissatisfied with the experience that they're having. So the customer behind this post had made previous attempts to contact customer service. One caveat that I will say is within all of these examples, I have blurred out the brand name. I'm not here to tell you what car you should or shouldn't buy. I'm just here to tell you how social listening can help your strategy. But what they've actually done is, despite multiple failed attempts, they've now resorted to social media, and they've not directly kind of attacked the brand's page. They've gone a bit wayward and rogue. And so mentions like this, which talk to or don't talk to the brand, are surprisingly easy to overlook. It's not a direct message. And it means that, it's very hard to keep a track of where these conversations are happening. So the idea is that you can mitigate before it escalates. So being able to tap into these complaints where they're happening. And again, some of the sort of more advanced companies that we're working with have a pretty direct line between their social and digital team and their customer experience and customer service team. They're not working in silos, they're very much working together, and all of that feedback data is feeding into the one loop. So they can use that to inform things like their bots or automated messages, or how do we ensure that we're giving the most seamless experience to that automation process to be able to meet your current and future customers exactly where they are. The next use case is definitely generating leads. We see this a lot, like how do we attract more sales? How do we become a part of the conversation where it's happening? There's so much, we don't know where it's happening. So monitoring all the keywords and phrases that are relevant to your industry can also help you find potential customers. So again, these two posts on the right here, Reddit, a very crucial but untapped area of conversation for a lot of brands. And I think, again, within the product, Sam will really bring this to light. There's so much conversation on there. This is an example of somebody that's looking for a family car, an SUV. They've pretty much laid out exactly what their needs are and given an indication of scope. And I think there's probably a lot of car salesmen across the country that would kill for this opportunity for somebody to lay out their needs so explicitly and give an indication of the scope and budget. So this is somebody that's right within that buyer intent phase of that customer journey. This is the ideal time and place for companies to inform their potential buyer about what vehicles will be a good fit for them, and really tap into that conversation in a genuine and authentic way as well. So tracking phrases like looking for and together with a car can reveal mentions from those that are actively seeking personal recommendations. And this is one of the rare opportunities where suggestions are welcome. take away the element of the sleazy car salesman and become somebody that's a real, genuine, authentic advisor. The next is tracking the competition. So revealing opportunities to convert your competitors' dissatisfied customers into your own satisfied ones. This, again, is a very easy and quick way of being able to attract customers that are within that buyer intent phase. So monitoring those online mentions, easily one ignored customer can turn into your own very loyal fan. So being able to meet those potential customers where they are. But I think beyond this, of course, there's lots of other use cases for competitive intelligence and benchmarking against other brands. So keeping a tab on what others are doing, staying very competitive, and being aware of the latest trends and conversation that's happening across your other brands. Understanding how audiences are relating to their latest campaigns. This is something that I see a lot and that's done very well in terms of using this to inform your own content strategy. And really kind of reinventing the wheel as well. Seeing which strategies work well, and of course, learning which products and services are popular amongst your competitors' consumers as well. And then finally, but probably most interestingly, product development. So this is an area that we're seeing become a real prominent and priority more and more. So really using continuous feedback loops from brand advocates, from your very loyal customers to drive product and accessory development. So using this feedback, using positive sentiment and all of those conversations that are happening to drive what you're doing with the products. Maybe even developing new accessories to accommodate to current customers. This post on the right, again, within Reddit, specifically talking about a facelift that happened to a current model of car brand. Actually, this was a direct response to the feedback that had been happening online. So a premium car brand, very well respected, but actually a lot of the interior and a lot of the media systems were a little bit lagging compared to the competition. And of course, within the 2022 facelift, they responded directly to this and reinvented what the interior looked like. So I think this does speak to just how important that sort of customer feedback is in the development of new models and further accessories. And another reason to monitor mentions of your products, help you figure out, what future editions and variations are going to look like, and really kind of future-proof your business as well. I have talked a lot there, and I am really excited to pass to Sam now so that he can take you into the product and see how this really comes alive within TalkWalker.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. Again, good morning to everyone. As Alex mentioned, it's fantastic to see such a global audience here on the webinar today. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're here in London. And I get the exciting job of taking you into the platform itself to bring together some of the themes that Alex has been touching on, really based on the data that we've been analysing over the past month or so. So as you'll see, we've been looking at mostly social media, but also some online news, some reviews, some blogs. And we're really going to just analyse some of those key themes that Alex has mentioned around the buying journey for consumers these days. And so with that, I'm just going to stop sharing my video and now share my screen. Alex, please just shout in case that's not there. I think that should be good.
We can see that. All good.
Super, thank you. So we're going to look really at 3 dashboards I've put together here based on all the data that we've been analysing here at TalkWalker. We'll start quickly with just an overview of the automotive industry in general and really what's been happening over the past year in terms of buying patterns and trends that have been emerging. We'll then jump into analysis specifically around pre-owned cars, which, as we'll see in the automotive industry analysis, has really been one of the defining trends and really over the past sort of 3 years as COVID kicked off. As I'm sure everyone's aware, the availability and price of pre-owned cars have jumped through the roof. There's been lots of conversations about best deals, whether people should be buying pre-owned versus new, for example. And then finally, we thought it'd be really interesting to delve into one of those subreddit analyses that Alex mentioned as well. So there's so much conversation happening on forums that brands are often pretty blind to. And I think doing a full analysis of one of those subreddits, the one we've chosen here is "What car should I buy?", which is certainly a very relevant and interesting one. Really brings up some interesting themes. As Alex mentioned, this will probably take about 20 minutes, at which point we'll have 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. You will see on the main screen at the bottom, there is a little Q&A box. If you do have any questions as we go through this, you can submit your questions in there. You can do it anonymously, so feel free to ask questions in there. And then, as I mentioned, we will allot some time at the end just to go through those. So let's get started. So what's happened in the automotive industry over the past 12 months? What do those conversations look like? As I mentioned, we're looking here at social media, also a bit of online media. And I think as anyone who's tried to build queries to look for brand mentions and automotive mentions online can probably attest to, there is so much spam out there, so much spam around brands, around cars. Filtering out is quite a challenge. And we can do that using Boolean. We can throw in some exclusions of things we don't want to see. But what I've also done here is actually use some of our inbuilt AI filters to filter out some of that spam. So things like automated accounts, SEO spam, all that's been filtered out. And what we're left with is a really clean data set, which is really essential when we're trying to get insights from this data, just given there's so much spam. There's also just so much content that we're really not interested in. So a lot of automotive content is around things like accidents, crimes that have been committed, thefts, etc. So filtering that out as well means we have a nice clean data set that we can then use what we call our conversation clusters to really get that 360-degree view of what's been going on. So what are conversation clusters? These are AI-powered analyses run in the background. What they do is they group all the conversations together. In this case, it's just looking at the automotive industry over the past 1 year, to automatically cluster similar conversations and actually show us what those main themes are. So it means we don't need to go through those hundreds of thousands of posts. It means we go further than just simple word clouds, which just show you how many words have been mentioned and how many times. What it does is actually use semantic analysis as well to understand themes, even if the same keywords aren't used. So as an example, if an article refers to, let's say, a green car versus green energy, it understands that semantic context and can group those conversations appropriately. It just means it's a really simple way for you to get to grips with a new topic. There's no human element, human work needed on this. The AI groups these conversations, and you'll see these top themes coming out on the right-hand side here. So what I can see is the top trend, the top story that's been coming out over the past year is what the AI has called this clash between ideals and reality. And this description here just quickly explains that the quest to ramp up electric vehicle production, or whether to go all electric, is really the defining factor. You can see some of the keywords that are being used around that. So China's mentioned a lot. We've got electric vehicles, companies like Tesla, other companies like VW, Toyota, BMW coming up here. And we can also understand some of the top sources that have been reporting on that story. So in this case, it's mostly news outlets, so less consumer conversations, but we see traditional media like the BBC, Sky, The Economist, for example, all talking about that story there. We can also see people are asking about buying used cars. So one of those top themes coming out here is what you need to know about buying a used car. And these are consumer conversations, so people asking, but also traditional media writing articles in magazines, for example, about what's needed. And then when we look at the automotive industry in general, we see towards the bottom here, some of those more consumer conversations starting to emerge. So people discussing things like the prices of warranties and insurance prices rising. Also people asking questions about how to buy a car. As Alex said, a lot of this buying journey now happens online before people even step into a dealership. So this is useful to get a quick overview, but I think it's also really interesting to look at how the different conversations span over different media types as well. So we could also take a look at these conversations through the lens of the different media types. And what we see here is these questions about car service, warranty, largely happening on Twitter. That's the blue media type there. And what we see here, all this purple is what people are discussing on forums. So Reddit, Mumsnet, particular automotive forums as well. So these questions, buying a car questions, here's what you need to know about buying a car, what are the best and worst used cars, all this conversation really happening on forums there. Whereas you see traditional media like magazines and newspapers discussing top cars to buy, for example. So in terms of where that conversation is happening online, we can see a media split here. A lot of conversations happening on Twitter, forums as we saw, but also magazines, also YouTube conversations, other platforms as well, including podcasts. But we can also understand which platforms are generating most engagement. So whilst Twitter dominates and forums dominate in terms of overall posts, when we look at the split of engagement here, we'll see actually it's YouTube videos and also TikTok videos here that are generating most engagement. We can quickly identify some of those viral posts here to understand what's trending. Here we have TikTok videos, along with engagement rates, and we can understand exactly what those top themes are. We also have a little helpful summary at the top here, so if you don't want to go through and read all these posts to understand what's going on, we can just see here, so actually all these TikTok videos are mostly about car repairs and maintenance, people posting videos of themselves fixing cars, buying new cars, tweaking, and so on and so forth. And then finally, we can just quickly understand what's the sentiment towards the automotive industry and towards buying a car on each of these different platforms. We saw YouTube generates a lot of engagements. YouTube is also mostly positive. So just under 40% of all the videos there are actually very positive towards the automotive industry. Whereas we see the TV and radio media source here actually being fairly negative. So let's jump on from the sort of, I guess, where these conversations are happening online to who's driving these conversations. And then also, what are those factors that are making people buy cars? So if we look at audience demographics, we can see it's majority male. So 4/5 of all those conversations are men, mostly in that millennial age range, so between 25 and 34. We can also see their top occupations and interests. So actually a lot of professionals, so engineers, entrepreneurs, posting about the industry here. And when we look at their top interests, perhaps not surprising that automotive comes out of the top interest, but you can also see some of those tangential interests as well. So a lot of families, people interested in sports, news, food and drinks, and so on and so forth. And we can also see specifically where those conversations are happening. So the heat map here just shows you where there's peaks and troughs in some of those conversations geographically. And we can also zoom in down to city level as well. So understand that actually there's a big spike in conversations around Dusseldorf and Cologne here in Germany, for example. But what is it that people are interested in when they're buying a car? So here we now break down the automotive conversations into what I've called these buying factors. So are people interested in, for example, warranties, reliability, low price, and so on and so forth? And it seems when looking at the industry in general, so also including new car purchases, for example, it seems like security is the biggest concern right now. The majority of the conversations revolve around warranty, customer service, reliability of the car, and also safety. Things like low price score fairly low, and also fuel efficiency is one of the least dominant conversations over the past year. We can even see how that breaks down by country as well. So you have different countries on the left listed here, and the split of those different themes per country here. If we look at reliability, for example, we can see Kenya, 43% is the most dominant factor when it comes to buying a car. Taking low price though, for example, we see that Germany and Nigeria, that's the top concern there. And then we can also just understand some of those top conversations and top concerns by each of those different areas. So if we look at spaciousness, people are discussing things like rear seats and leather upholstery. When it comes to safety, we're looking at things like alloy wheels, people discussing different safety features, driver seats, so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to analyzing your own brand, your own products versus your competitors. This is where running a competitor analysis to understand that share of voice becomes really interesting. So I've just anonymized a few car brands here, but it helps you understand that share of voice. And I think what's interesting in this example is that the dominant brand, we'll call brand 6 here, with 19% share of voice. Whilst it's dominant in terms of overall mentions, if we look at the sentiment of those conversations around the brand here, and we look at a score we call net sentiment, which is really just an overall favorability rating, that same brand actually scores fairly low, so towards the bottom. So whilst there's lots of conversations online, a lot of those conversations are actually negative, and actually there's not a lot of positive conversations coming out. So this really helps you benchmark your brand versus some of your top competitors. You could even benchmark your own brand's models here. So if you wanted to understand model by model, what that sentiment looks like, what that benchmarking looks like, you could do that. You could understand the competitive split by country. So you can see pretty clearly here, for example, that brand number 2 is dominant in Germany. And if you want to understand why that is, we can understand some of the key features that are being talked about around that brand. So customers really valuing the seats, the speed, quality, and also design of brand 2's cars. Finally, when doing an analysis of brands and industries online, we also need to consider visual affinities. So understanding where brands are being talked about, even if consumers aren't talking about them and mentioning the brand in text or even tagging the brand. And this is where looking at logos is super interesting. So what we can track here is any instances where a brand's logo is used online. We'll look at some examples of that. So even if a brand isn't tagging you or mentioning your name, we can still use AI to identify where your logo is featured in images and videos. We can identify where people are posting about the brand. So this is really interesting to understand in which context consumers are posting about your brand. Now, unsurprisingly here, you'll see some of those top scenes for the automotive industry include car parks, inside of cars, raceways, for example. It's really interesting to see, where are consumers using your product in real life? Where are they posting selfies? Where are they posting Instagram photos? Where exactly are your brands and products being used? And then just here, for example, you'll see some examples of where brands are being featured, but not being mentioned. So in this case, this is a little TikTok video from a Polish influencer that generated 159,000 engagements. And if we just load up TikTok, we'll see that actually there's no mention of any brand here whatsoever. But within the video itself, you see brand logo featured there. So if you consider the number of mentions that may happen online where a brand isn't mentioned, but where a logo is, you start to understand the sort of volumes of conversations that may be being missed. As we saw in the overall automotive conversations there, used cars is really one of those trends that has really spiked during the past couple of years, especially during COVID. So we've done a quick analysis of what pre-owned car conversations look like and what consumers are looking at in pre-owned cars versus the overall conversations and buying new cars in general. Again, the cluster just really helps us get a sense of what's going on here. Vast majority of these conversations, as you can see, are people asking, why are used cars so expensive? Why is there a shortage? And crucially, people are asking when a price is going to fall. But we also see consumers asking questions around financing. So, should I be buying the car on hire purchase or personal contract payments, for example? What are some of the questions we should be asking? For example, what mileage should we be looking at when buying a used car? Now, in sort of stark contrast to the overall automotive conversations, it's even more dominant here on Twitter and forums. So the vast majority of these conversations happening there. So real consumer conversations as opposed to, let's say, traditional media. And we can also understand some of those top themes by each of the different media types. So while, for example, magazines over on the left here are discussing the cost of living crisis, we can see people on forums referencing a lot the money saving expert forum in the UK. So people going onto that forum to understand the best deals available where they can get the best value cars. Again, another important source for consumers to get that information before they start talking to dealers. In terms of the overall sentiment around pre-owned cars, using something like this, what we call the sentiment key drivers, just helps understand some of the more positive conversations that people are discussing. So people talking about rear seats, some of the more technical features of used cars. And towards the negative side here, you get some of the more negative conversations, which I think always showed something interesting. And in this case, public transport really took my eye. And what we can see is when we look at those conversations down here, lots of conversations around things like inflation, how it's affecting people buying used cars. The BMW boss saying, actually stop buying new cars, keep the old ones for longer. People actually giving up cars just given the cost of inflation and switching over to public transport. People even saying, public transport's really bad, but there's no alternative. We can't afford a new car. So I think really interesting that's coming up as one of the top phrases being used by consumers over the past year. We can understand attitudes by country as well. So South Africa coming up most favorably here in terms of conversations around used cars. And we can also use our AI to actually segment conversations into customer journeys. So it's really interesting here, I think, to understand, are people talking online about making a purchase, having purchased, or are they looking to make a decision? And I think this is where you see a lot of really interesting conversations. So again, just using AI to segment these conversations and understand where people are really solidifying that decision to buy a used car. And again, here we see lots of forums. So top post here in terms of engagement is a South African forum where people are looking to buy a luxury used car. We see the UK automotive forum, piston heads, come up quite a few times. People looking for recommendations on a cheaper car for a commute. What can I get for 7,000? Up to 20,000, need help. So these are all real consumers asking for advice, and they're getting responses from experts on these forums telling them what to look at. The audience is pretty similar to the automotive in general. So we're looking at around 4/5 male again, and mostly millennials. What's interesting, I think, is where these conversations are happening and which platforms, where you can start to identify some of the top sources where you should be doing your social listening. We can look at the top sources by posts. So again, we have forums like Piston Heads in the UK. We have the Money Saving Expert Forum. We have a Reddit forum, Mumsnet as well. So lots of forums here where huge amounts of conversations are happening. We can also understand where most engagement is happening as well. So the ones that are generating most comments and likes, and as well as Piston Heads, we also have specific car forums. So BMW forum here. We have an English-speaking forum for expats in Switzerland asking where they can buy cars. It really helps you understand what are some of those top sources you should be keeping an eye out for monitoring those conversations. And finally, when we look at the consumer interests now for used cars, I think what's interesting is compared to the industry overall, price here is by far the dominant factor when it comes to buying a used car. And things like those safety features actually slip down the list. Again, we can understand that split by country to understand individual countries' preferences. So both Nigeria and South Africa here, the price of that used car is by far the most significant factor. Whereas in France, actually, they're most interested in the driving performance of that car. So finally, we've mentioned a few times now the importance of forums online and conversations where potential buyers, already owners of cars, are discussing what they should be doing. And I think one often overlooked factor when doing social listening as well is, where are those conversations happening when my brand isn't even mentioned? And Reddit is one of those great sources of information, as Alex mentioned, where consumers are having conversations, but all those comments under those threads don't actually mention brands. So someone might start a thread around, I want to buy, let's say, an Audi, which one should I get? All those comments might say, okay, you want to get this one, without actually mentioning the brand itself. And that's why I think it's super useful to actually monitor the entirety of a subreddit. So in this case, we're simply analyzing every single post on the subreddit, what car should I buy, to understand those dominant questions, those dominant conversations, even if brands aren't being mentioned. And it really helps you tap into some of those top consumer concerns. So again, if we look at those clusters, we can see the top concern on this thread is the reliability of those cars. We can see people asking for advice. So should they be buying a hybrid or a EV? What's advice in general? We can see someone actually trying to buy their own first car and asking if their girlfriend will be embarrassed if they buy this car. So some good advice coming from Redditors there. What we also see down here, though, is actually parents looking for advice for cars for their children. So someone's asking here for advice on buying their first car for their 17-year-old. What's a good inexpensive car to teach a 16-year-old, for example? So, really honing here on some of those top consumer concerns, and by monitoring these threads, you really start to meet consumers where they are with the questions that they have. Again, we can use word clouds to understand some of the top themes being mentioned. So people here are looking at gas mileage, fuel efficiency, for example. We see some of the top brands being mentioned, so you can understand if you're part of that conversation or not. And we can also understand who are some of the top influencers on the forum. So if you're looking to do some outreach, if you're looking to find some influencers for your campaigns, you can understand some of the most passionate Redditors. So someone here has posted 1,600 times in the past few months. So people are really engaged on this forum. You can also see who's actually generating most engagement. So when they do post, who's actually replying most to their posts. And finally, from the forum here, you can actually understand where traffic is being driven. So by unraveling links, we can actually see here what are the top specific web pages and even what are some of those top level domains where people are sending and posting links to online. I think it's interesting here if we look at some of those top web pages. Quite a few of these are to car checking websites where you can pop a registration in and see the vehicle history of a site. So people recommend that buyers do that. We also see people sending other Redditors off to YouTube where they can then watch videos of people reviewing cars and just understanding a bit more around that as well. So I hope that gave a quick overview in terms of some of the top themes and trends online at the moment. We've got about 5-ish minutes left for questions. So I can see quite a few questions have come in, Alex. Probably, can you view those and
yes,
have a look what we've got there?
Let me just put this on the screen. So we've got a few anonymous questions and a few from some other participants. So we'll just kind of reel through them. The first one is, can TalkWalker analyze the content of videos, what the creator says, and not only the comments description associated to the video?
Yeah, great question. It really depends on the platform, but we do have our own speech-to-text technology. So taking, for example, Twitter videos, we will analyze the entire speech content of that. So you can also then search those videos for brand mentions, trend mentions, etc. Yeah.
Right. The next question is, and I am sorry if I don't do this justice, from Vida. How can we leverage social listening to identify opportunities for product improvement and innovation? Yeah,
great question. Do you want to take that one, Alex? I know you sort of touched on that in your introduction, really.
And you might have something to add, Sam. I think sure. Actually, the dashboard that we looked at that broke down, it was specifically for used cars, but it broke down different features. So there was like price, safety, quality. I actually think replicating something like that for, say, a new car would really tap into those conversations. So really identifying specific product features that are generating that conversation. So whether it is like, for example, on a media system, I know that this is something that comes up all the time. People love listening to Spotify or, whatever it is. And so being able to have that kind of technological element within the features of the car, but also more widely sort of using that feedback loop. So what you're seeing within reviews directly from your customers and sort of using that feedback to drive what the top themes are. Is there something that's coming up time and time again, whether it is something in the comfort or quality, and kind of using that to identify really key areas? Unless there's anything you would add, Sam?
I think you nailed it, Alex. I'd probably just throw in the image recognition as well. So I think, on top of all that, sometimes consumers aren't actually mentioning your brand. They might just go and post a photo of their car and say, I'm really unhappy with this, without any sort of context, no tag of the brand. And so by being able to sort of monitor that as well, you can then start to dig into, okay, what is it they're unhappy at, and start to dig into that as well.
Great. We've also got one from Kemfrey here who says, can Talk Walker help in the healthcare industry?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
We just covered sort of the automotive space today, but absolutely, we work across all B2B and B2C clients, and we do have a lot of clients in the healthcare industry as well.
Great. I've also got another anonymous one here. What brands can I look for?
So you can look for whoever you want. What we saw there was really, obviously they were anonymized for purposes of this, but the way the sort of searches work is you create what are called these topics, which are built around Boolean queries. What that means is those topics can really be anything you want. You can create a topic around your brand, a competitor brand, as many brands as you like. You can create around topics like we saw today, so a topic around automotive. But really there's no limitations in terms of what you want to look for online, and also how you want to segment that data as well. So whether it's into product categories, key messages, spokespeople, for example.
What I would say is we have a multitude of different customers that, obviously are tracking their own brand, but then have large competitor lists, and maybe like higher level topical themes, whether it's something like sustainability, it might be like EV within this use case. So the list goes on, so to speak. Finally, then, last question here is, could you do an analysis of my brand's car models? So I think that's specifically relating to like individual car models.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sort of from a technical perspective, we'd set up a topic as I just sort of explained then. So we create a topic for your overall brand. What we could then do is create what we call these custom filters, and each individual car model would be a custom filter. What that means is where you saw that benchmark there of brands versus each other, we could do the same thing then for your car models. So you could segment all your data and see the overall favorability of a model versus another model. You could see the top features that are being discussed from this model versus this model, start to understand things like the demographics of who's posting about the model. So absolutely, we do that for a lot of clients, yeah.
And I think I'm just going to check both tabs here. There is one more that's just come in. It's more of a testament. So Teresa, thank you. We love to hear that you're kind of enjoying the platform. I don't know.
Fantastic, thank you.
Is there, maybe I'll give it one more minute to see if anything else comes in. But like I say, this session is recorded. So please do share across your organization, across your colleagues. And again, if anything comes up after the session, please do feel free to drop myself and Sam an email and we'll come back to you. Looks like nothing else is coming in there. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been really great to have this session and to have so many people joining us from different regions. And I hope to speak to you again soon.